Well, Skip, thanks for joining us, meeting with us, talking a little bit about some barrel-aged beers. But, I mean, you're one of those names that I get a chance to, quote-unquote, hear from you a lot. I love that you guys, keep connected with us, are sharing stuff for the industry. And, it's funny enough, I actually looked up when I started full-time at Brewer, it was January of 16. And one of my first interviews in March of 16 was with Neil. I think the brewery was a year old. It had just won the USA Today contest. So WeldWerks has been on the tip of my tongue for quite a while. So how are things going for you guys? Every time I see it, it seems like something fun and exciting is happening for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, everything's great for us. We commissioned a new 30-barrel brew house at the end of last year, and that is up and running. It is basically a Juicy Bits factory, but we're brewing on that, and then we're still working on our original 15-barrel brew house, and we're keeping busy. We're putting out beer. We're trying to, stay up with everything that's current and new, but then also, staying true to what we do and, barrel-aged stouts and IPAs, but we're always looking at what's up ahead, and that's always kind of fun and somewhat challenging, but it's fun.
Yeah. Oh, like you said, the Juicy Bits factor, I mean, that had to have just completely changed the trajectory of what the brewery was going to be since you guys opened in 2015.
I don't know if I would be sitting here if Juicy Bits did not take off the way that it did. I know that we probably wouldn't be as big. I mean, it's really hard to say because, how would you know what would happen if we didn't do it? But, that Juicy Bits has been a huge part of our growth. We've kind of scaled. Originally, we were holding back how much we produced, and we're finally kind of looking at like, hey, we're going to actually produce this in a large quantity this year. And I think it'll still be below 50% of our production, but it's the first time that we've allowed it to get up above 30, just because we've opened so many more markets and territories throughout the country, and just being able to have that on the shelves has been really important to us. And we don't want to say no to anybody who wants Juicy Bits, which in the past hasn't always been the case. So
Sure. Well, always good to talk IPAs, but I wanted to talk about Medianoche. Kind of lead me through the history of it and kind of its rise to becoming one of those sought after type beers. And it's a fun canvas that you guys as brewers get to play with as well.
Yeah, so Medianoche actually kind of started in Neil Fisher, who you mentioned before, Neil Fisher's garage, and it was kind of something that he was doing at his house. At the time, it was called Alexandria the Blessed, I believe that's the name, but it was, and he had, in his basement, he had full-size barrels, and he was brewing a bunch to fill these full-size barrels, and so it was kind of based off that original recipe. Over the years, we have tweaked it quite a bit, but not actually quite a bit, but we have tweaked it here and there. So it started there. One of the first beers that was brewed here at WeldWerks was what would become Medianoche, but it was instantly put into barrels. So I want to say it was probably the third or fourth batch. And then the first ones that were released, the first Medianoches that were released were on the first anniversary, WeldWerks' first anniversary, and it was draft only. I don't know if there were crowlers or not at the time. Mm-hmm. I don't recall. I don't think at that point there were crowlers, but it was released draft only during, like I said, our anniversary. But yeah, so that was kind of the first anniversary, and it was kind of limited to a brunch that was being put on that day. And then from there, we slowly did bottle releases and single barrels, and it just kind of grew. At the time, there was not, in Colorado, there weren't very many big barrel-aged stouts kind of similar to this. Oscar Blues had a couple things here like once a year or so, but there wasn't anything that kind of came close to what Medianoche was, with its thickness, its high ABV, and, the length of which it's time that it's spent in barrels. So it's I I think that's kind of part of the rise for it. Then it quickly won a gold medal at GABF in 2017, I think. Okay. And that kind of set it on a path. The same year, that same batch won FOBAB, the Festival of Barrel Aged Beers, won a FOBAB medal. So I think that kind of put it into kind of a more common for the beer nerd, name that kind of was more common for the beer nerd. So I think that's kind of the rise of it. And then, over the years, we've been playing with it. It's like you had said, it's a great canvas for playing. There's lots of room to experiment with it, whether it's the recipe, the barrels, the adjuncts that it gets after resting. There's just plenty of places to play with it. We've tried to explore as many as we can over the years. But yeah, I think that those, I think the FOBAB and the GABF is kind of what pushed it into the center of attention. And then from there, we've, had stuff like Starry Noche, which was our hazelnut, coconut, that kind of came out right before COVID started, and that kind of might have pushed it a little further too. So we're constantly seeing new and exciting things from that brand.
Talking about Medianoche and the impact that kind of that, the beer nerds that try to go after this there were already ones out there before. Black Tuesday had been out there. People knew about that. Assassin, things like that. Did Neil and you guys think that this is what we wanted to make, like something that could be craveable like that for the craft beer connoisseur?
So 100%. Those are two names that fit perfectly into it. So I would say the three biggest ones that Neil was basing it off of was, of course, Bourbon County, the original. And then Black Tuesday definitely had its influence with that huge ABV. I think that, he had decided early on that might be too far on the ABV, those 19 percenters. For how good that beer is, it is very hard to drink a lot of it because of the alcohol. And then Assassin was a big one. I think, Neil has said multiple times that Assassin is one of those beers that at that time it was the thickest that he had ever really tasted, and without it being like cloyingly sweet. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what he had set out to produce with Medianoche, and that's kind of those three. So to name two of the three is very astute with what was happening in the beer scene at the time, but also kind of those are exactly kind of the things that he was looking at the time.
Going through, I got a chance to go to Toppling Goliath and see their barrel room, and to talk about the way they've had to grow that program, just to be able to create stuff for Assassin and other beers like it in their portfolio. You guys probably have this same thing now where you're getting barrels just for this, but then you start a blending program and it creates all these other beers. Talk a little bit about that and how, just the fact that you're putting it in a barrel, all of a sudden you are tasting it, taking notes and going, okay, well, this is going to have to be in here. This is going to have to be over here, because they're becoming two different beers that you can go with.
Yeah. So for us, our barrel program has grown a lot from even when I started. At the most, we had, I think, 650-ish barrels. We kind of stay around the 350 mark. We think that's kind of where we were. 650 at that time was a lot, and it was a lot of undertaking. That was actually my full-time job at that point, before moving over to my current position. But I think that one of the things that we used to do is we would make a batch of beer and it'd be like, oh, we're going to only use barrels from this batch. And now we kind of have like a whole toolkit, right? We have all these different recipes and different kinds of barrels. And so it kind of makes it a little bit more fun for us when we go into blending, because we're looking at not just like, hey, we're going to take this whole stack from this one batch. We're going to take two from this one and two from this one. And so we can add all these different characters in. When we're making a beer, let's say, the 2023 Medianoche. Mm-hmm. Well, we want to try to show off as much wood character and spirit character as we can in just those non-adjunctive ones. But if we're going after something like, let's take, for example, something like that we're releasing here soon, the Fluffernutter, which we originally were going to talk about. We would go through the barrel stack and we'd look for things that maybe have really big vanilla flavors, or they might present as peanut butter. So we're looking for those kinds of things. And so we have a starting point which already has some of those notes, and then clearly we're going to add in a bunch of other things to finish that off. But I think that definitely the bigger that we've gotten, the more nuanced we can get with our blending, and we don't just have to take, hey, these were all the same batch, they're all the same age, let's use that, which, when I first started was kind of how a lot of the Medianoches were, versus now the one that the 2023 was a 22 barrel blend. So that included from multiple batches. It's the biggest Medianoche, like just regular Medianoche blend that we have done to date. But it was, it's over a couple tasting sessions. You can't taste 22 barrel aged stouts and expect it to go, you to be super accurate the entire time. So, definitely a couple sessions, but yeah, we're definitely able to kind of control and pick flavors that we want, and a lot differently than we used to be able to.
Gotcha. Now, how do you set a production schedule for this? Is it we're going to produce a lot of the beer at one time and get it all in the barrel at the same time? Or, is it depending on what barrels you have available at the time to be able to fill? I mean, when do you start thinking about something like Medianoche 2023 to know that you can have a certain amount ready? I mean, you're throwing blind darts, right?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing that was really lucky for us early on was that we just decided that we were going to, during COVID was kind of a really critical moment for a lot of people in their barrel programs. And it was which way you're going to go. It's really hard at a time that everything was unknown. It was really hard for people to go ahead and say, let's put beer in barrels for a time and not know if we'll ever even be in business to see it. So we made the decision, the conscious decision, that we were actually going to go the opposite way. We were actually going to go harder on it, work with our barrel brokers, and that kind of got us a leg up on some people, because while other people were saying no to barrels, we were saying yes. So we had we took in a lot more barrels at that time than we do now. That was kind of like an intentional thing. And so with Medianoche, all Medianoches are at least 18 months in barrels. So for us to plan out 18 months is impossible. The way that we do things, the way that our company has kind of grown, kind of just how we've always done stuff. So it's kind of impossible to plan. So we kind of take each release kind of by time of the year. Whether this 2023 will see a national distribution to like some of our major markets. So with something like that, then we're going to look at it a little bit different. Like, hey, we need to make sure we produce enough to hit these markets. So then we'll blend in based off the volume that we're looking for. If that answered your question.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Another major ingredient in something like a release like this is the barrels. How are you procuring them? Is it just through the years you guys have worked at it? I mean, how was it at the start versus where you guys are now? Because there's lots of breweries that want to get into the barrel aging game, but sometimes it's like, where do you even start? When we started, we were using we were using Breckenridge distilling barrels, which is MGP barrels, I believe. Yeah. And so we were sourcing it directly from a local distillery. We happen to be lucky enough to have some really big distilleries here in Colorado, Breckenridge, Stranahan's, and Old Elk and Fort Collins. So we were able to source some of those pretty easily. Old Elk wasn't around at the time, but I'm sure if they were, we would be able to get some of their barrels a little bit easier. Law's Distillery, or Law's Whiskey House down in Denver as well. So there's plenty of local stuff, and we kind of started with local, and then we also are fortunate enough to have Rocky Mountain Barrel Company here in Colorado. Yeah. So we were able to kind of go through them originally. And then over the years, we've grown relationships with some of the reps. Some of them have moved on to go to other places like Kentucky Bourbon Barrel. That's another one of that's one of our biggest people that we work with. And then
Midwest Barrels, Barrel Supply. That's another group that we use a lot of. We really like working with people that we trust. So the two that we work with most is Midwest and Kentucky Bourbon, and that's just because we have grown relationships with them over the years. We trust that they're doing us right with the barrels and their storage and the shipping. We know that what they say was held in that barrel, it was actually in that barrel. Mm-hmm. And we know that, like, hey, if something's wrong, if we get a shipment and the hoop's falling off and somehow the hoop disappeared, I know that there'll be a hoop in the mail the next morning. So just working with it. But to get into it, I think is really just start slow and figure out what pace you need to be filling them at and work with them. A lot of the people that I work with, I give them predictions of what we're going to use for a year when we're looking at, and they stay on top of it. I'd say a great way to build any relationship is to spend money. I think people like you when you spend money, so that's something that we've done too. It's not the easiest thing to do, but clearly salespeople like you a little bit better if you're spending money with them. Mm-hmm. But that's the biggest thing is just to find who you trust and work with them. And there are plenty of great barrel suppliers out there. We've worked with some other ones on some other projects, but there are plenty of them out there. And I'm sure that they're all hoping and willing to work with you to get what you need.
And I think it's become almost a lot easier. There's more people willing to. You want to do something with those. And I think,
sure.
Like you said, the locality thing is, being sustainable, and people always want to do that. So sometimes looking local might be that first aspect.
That's the best first step. I think we used Breckenridge for the first almost 3 years, pretty much exclusively. So there's definitely an advantage to that and growing that relationship as well.
Do you guys come up with unique ideas and want a barrel, or is it kind of what your brokers have and you work with it from there?
I've been lucky enough in my career here and in past is to be able to get almost any barrel that I've wanted. I know that sounds a little spoiled of me, but I do send a lot of our brokers on missions for us. We recently got Amburana barrels in from Brazil, which have been kind of like my whale, the thing that I've been looking for, searching for forever. And finally, my friends at Northwest Barrel Supply was able to get me some of those, and they were very expensive, but they were, like I said, the last thing on my list. And I've asked them for that. That was a personal thing that I asked for. So we definitely work within what they have, but I will always, send people on missions because it's fun for them, fun for me. Mm-hmm. It's also fun to be able to get stuff that, other people probably won't be able to get because they don't even know to ask for it. Something like the Amburana barrels. I believe they got 8 of them, maybe 6 or 8, and we took 4 of them, and I'm sure that they never even made it onto a shopping list or, an inventory list. But so we've done both. I definitely think it's easiest if we have timelines to fill when we're filling barrels, then we'll definitely just shop off their lists. But I'm definitely always trying to kind of push them a little bit and get me something different than other people can buy off the shelf.
Yeah. Talking about Medianoche 2023 and the timeline, when did this begin for you guys? Because like you said, some of these barrels are 20 plus months since you filled them. It's a labor of love, and it's a time-consuming effort. How happy are you to see this coming to fruition?
I mean, so I'm lucky enough that I get to blend a new Medianoche, like just our classic Medianoche every year. Mm-hmm. It's kind of fun because with the Medianoche, the marquee, the 2023, next year the 2024, it's kind of one of those things where I like to take our time on it. I like to try to get as many different base recipes with as many different barrels and just kind of make this like a really cool blend. And the ages, I mean, so the oldest barrels we have in this were 31 months old. So those are old barrels. Our youngest for this blend was 24 months. I can read you some of the barrels that went in there. So we have 6-year-old Old Fitzgerald. We have 4-year-old Law's Rye Whiskey. 10-year-old Eagle Rares. We have 12-year-old Weller. We have the Templeton single barrel 10-year Ryes. We have Old Elk 4 and 6-year-olds. We have some Weller 6-year-old. So I mean that alone. And then the Buffalo Trace, their Warehouse H, their experimental project. We have some of those barrels in there. So I mean, you can see that like there's just a ton of different stuff in there. Almost every single thing is from a different batch or recipe or rested in different barrels. So it's to try to make this complex, nuanced, but also not like getting too far in the weeds where it's impossible to pick out anything. Mm-hmm. So that's part of it as well. But it's definitely fun. I'm definitely lucky to be a part of a team that gets to blend that every year. And like I said, with the actual just the Medianoche, nothing in front of the name, nothing after, just that year's Medianoche is always something that we like to try to really push. Kind of what we can do with just barrel aged stout, and I'm pretty happy with how this year's turned out, and can't wait for it to get into people's hands and see what people have to say about it.
Cool. Now, are you a spirits guy as well? I mean, is it something you drink, you enjoy?
Yeah,
or is it more the
I am
nuance?
a big spirits guy, but funny enough, I am not a big bourbon guy. I drink tons of spirits, all different kinds of spirits. I love trying different stuff, but for some reason, I drink bourbon. I've tried plenty. I work at a place with a lot of bourbon heads, and because of my job working with all these barrels, I've tried plenty. It's just not my. It's not my thing. It's I like to call it oaky corn water, which is what it is. But it seems to upset some people for some reason when I say that.
Let's go through kind of the process of getting to a packaging.
Sure.
Note-taking process has to be so important, whether it's having something on the barrel to be able to work off of, a spreadsheet to work off of. How do you guys put together? And I think we've talked about this before in email,
yeah.
but kind of give me the mm-hmm. whole note-taking process that you guys have, just to make sure you know where your barrels are and what they're doing.
Yeah. So we do have sheets on every single barrel. Which includes stuff like a barrel number, brew date, fill date, pH, and then it will have gravity starting, original gravity, and then the gravity that's where it went into the barrel. I don't like to call that final gravity. I call it pre-barrel final gravity. And then the calculated ABV going into there. So then we also have a lot more. We have similar information, but a little bit more detailed in a spreadsheet as well. And then as for organization of the barrel room, we actually have a barrel room, a dedicated barrel room, which the entire front wall is garage doors. So each bay is kind of, we have an organizational system where the oldest barrels are in the front all the way to the far right of the building. And then they kind of rotate. And so about 2 to 3 times a year, we pull every single barrel out. We go through, we make sure everything is what it says it is, cross-reference it to our inventory list spreadsheet. And then we will put it kind of back in order. So that way, in theory, we should be using the oldest ones first. That's not always the case due to blending. But that way it's a little bit easier. But that way we're not going through, hey, we have every single brand new barrel in the front row of these bays, and we have to move all of those out just to get to some stuff. So we kind of have a organizational system. And then lastly, we do use Ecos, which is a beer online software, which also has some information on the barrels and some other stuff. So we do have a lot of tracking. And to make sure that we're keeping everything inventory wise up to date. So that's those days are long days when we have to reorganize the barrel room, and pulling every single barrel out and then putting them all back in order in a single day is quite the task. It's usually about 2 people on a forklift and 8 to 10 hour days on those. Yeah.
You get that in there, you have to go through and taste all of these at some point, like you were talking about. What are some of the things that it's hard, like you said, it's hard to, you can't do this in a whole day, it's right. Just impossible. Like, how much time should be dedicated, what kind of things should you be looking for, what are some, we can't use this at all, and then what are some
Sure.
of those, like, maybe we can use this in something else?
Sure. So The first thing that we actually do always is start with the spreadsheet. We could tell a lot of information just by data that was gathered. Since we've had this barrel room for some time now, we can kind of tell what a gravity and a pH what they're going to look like in this room. So we start by looking at gravities and trying to mix gravities together to kind of get a number that we want, and then we'll go through and taste a couple barrels out of that. So out of a batch, so we go, oh, this one's at 16 Plato, but this one's at 20. Let's try to blend those together, and then we'll go through and we'll taste a couple of those, and then you just kind of taste a couple barrels off of a stack. And it's something that, like, when we're doing like this 22 barrel blend, we're looking at a couple barrels at a time from each stack, and then we're gonna move on, kind of doing a couple at a time, and then we'll get kind of bigger stack or bigger amounts. And then kind of sit down and actually start trying to see how they all play together in a bigger thing. So, I mean, it's a couple days at a time. Usually we try to do it all within a week. Mm-hmm. Just because if you wait too long, then you start to forget what things tasted like, even with the notes you're tasting. Right. So it's definitely a process, and it's something that it seems like it should be a lot of fun, and it is fun, but it is work. Yeah. So it is a little bit of work, yeah.
Is there some, how many, what's the percentage do you think, or just a roundabout of how many barrels go bad for you guys? And has your quality improved? Have you guys been able to what you're doing has helped, and what are those keys?
Medianoche is made in such a way, and it's so thick that we really don't have too many barrels go bad. Percentage wise, I would say less than 10% for us. It's really hard for things to grow in that environment. It's pretty harsh between the bourbon that was in there beforehand. We're putting in a higher ABV liquid than a normal, one of our normal stouts. And then they're so viscous and sweet that it's pretty hard for spoilers to live in it. And we've said it time and time again, and we're like, at some point in time, something's going to evolve or change into where it will be a problem. And that's true, and it probably will be at some point in that barrel room. Over the years, we've moved so many barrel rooms and stuff that I don't think anything has been able to develop to kind of spoil Medianoche. But that's not to say that it won't. And we might see it. If we do see it, it would be in this room, since this was kind of its forever home. But like I said, at the current moment, we don't have too much spoil or unusable beer. If we do have anything that's a little bit crazy, we'll try to find a project that it fits in. When I say crazy, like it'd be, we had a beer that had like a green pepper flavor, and I'm not really quite sure why it developed. And I wouldn't say that it was like, it wasn't off-putting, and it wasn't it wasn't a spoiler of any sort. It just had this green pepper, and so that's when we made the world's. We made our. It was called the One Sip Challenge, and it was the world's hottest barrel-aged stout. I don't know if that's true or not. So, if someone else knows that, whatever, you can have it. But yeah, so we blended in ghost peppers, scorpions, and the other hot one with a crazy spooky name, Carolina Reaper. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So we blended the three of those, and then some milk chocolate, and we made this really, really spicy stout, which again played with that green pepper character that was already there. But like I said, the beer itself was still servable and great. There was no off flavor. It was just, sour notes or anything. It was just a little different than what we normally see. So we played it into a project.
It's fun to talk and it's fun to do, but it's not the basis of a company. Is it hard to sometimes be able to have to distinguish those two? Like, yeah, we want to invest money and invest time, but the ROI on these things are not the same as being able to sell, like for you guys, Juicy Bits, either across the counter or across 6-packs and stuff like that. Is it hard to sometimes have to reel things in, even though, you love having the innovation and the creativity?
Yes, It is hard sometimes, but also WeldWerks has done it's been really important for the company from the start, is to kind of do things a little bit differently than everyone else, spend the money, and we'll see the returns of it. I mean, like I said, we have a whole building that we own that houses barrels. I mean, that's not a luxury that a lot of other companies have, let alone will invest in paying overhead just to have a room full of barrels that, and inherently, I mean, it could not make any money, it's just a risk, and it just sits there. And we have our beers sit, like I said, 18-month minimum. We're kind of closer to a 24-month minimum now. I wouldn't say minimum, but a lot of our barrels are 24 months when we're pulling them now. So yeah, it's tough, but for us to reel it in, us reeling it in is like saying we only want 8 of that brand of barrels rather than the 30 that we used to get. That's kind of how we reel it in. We're still highly irresponsible with coconut and adjuncts. We have more loss than probably anyone else will take. If you look at someone like Goose Island, I'm sure there would be finance people yelling at them and telling them that they're wasting money and resources. And I'm saying this right now with our finance guy eating lunch at the table next to me, knowing that he is okay with our us being irresponsible with some of our barrel-aged beers, because we know that he knows that we're making the best beer, the best quality beer that we can, and that we stand behind everything that we do. I think if I didn't finish with that qualifier of we stand behind what we do, I think he might have a different feeling about it. But
we'll wrap it up right here. And
excellent.
I appreciate the talk. It's always fun to get to pick your brain. You're one of my favorite people when I see come across on an email. I always know it's going to be good quality, and I think people
Thank you. I
across the
appreciate
country
that.
enjoy it too. So.